What up? Winbush here, and today I'm excited to bring you guys Rokoko Vision, the 2-camera solution for motion capture without a suit. Now for this example, I actually want to show you something really dope, how we can set up the 2-camera solution using 2 Android devices. Now you can use any device that you want, whether it's iOS or Android, but for this example, I want to show you guys how I use my tablet here, which is the LumePad 2, and then also I'm going to be using my phone, which is the Samsung Fold right here, both of them being Android devices. Now the reason I'm using 2 Android devices is because Sam over at Rokoko actually did a video I would suggest you guys watch as well, but for his example he showed how to use a webcam and an iPhone to be able to do the Rokoko Vision motion capture, in which he's using this application called Camo. And whenever I was using it, as you can see right here, when I'm using my webcam, it's only giving me a 720p reception. It's kind of grainy, it's not the greatest. And then when I brought it over to my iPhone, I do have an iPhone 11, it was only giving me 720p as well. Now with this specific application, I noticed that when you use an Android device, you can actually use any resolution that you want. So you could go 720p, HD, or even up to 4K, in which I suggest only going with HD. That's what I did, and everything turned out perfect. Now for how my setup goes, in specific, I'm using my living room, in which I only have one wall in there. Like, it's a pretty big and open space. And so what I'm doing is I'm making sure that both of my cameras are going to be looking at one point on the wall, which I tried to pick a blanket space as possible. And then I went and covered up my TV so there's no reflections in there. Now you can go Wi-Fi, but for me, I wanted to plug everything in wired, because for one, that's actually what is recommended from the company over there at Camo. They say a wired connection is going to give you better results, and plus if you're going over Wi-Fi, you're giving yourself a chance of having something lag on your input there. And so I went to my local store and I got 10-foot USB cables for just every device that I could think of, just because I was experimenting. But again, I ended up going all Android for these devices, but with the 10-foot USB cables, it actually worked out pretty well. And so the reason I went for 10-foot was so I can actually spread my devices out as far as possible, so that I could cover as much as I can inside of my living room. Now the camera solution is good if you're only going to use one device plus your camera inside of your laptop. It's going to be suffice. But if you want to use 2 devices like I'm doing right here, I actually have a hack that's going to work for you guys. And so I actually have the Camo app hooked up to my tablet here, the LumePad 2. But then for my phone, I'm going to hook it up using this other application called iVCam, which was also suggested by Sam over at Rokoko. So same deal, you're just going to download the executable file for your computer, and then you're going to put it on your host, whatever it is, whether in my case it's my phone or if you're using a tablet. It's going to work with both Android and iOS devices, but it's the same type of setup as Camo. The reason I'm doing this, because once we get inside of Rokoko Vision, it's going to ask you to select a camera, and you can only select one Camo camera at a time. So having 2 applications running 2 cameras simultaneously is actually going to help you out in the end. Before we get into any of the camera stuff, you want to make sure that you're downloading the checkerboard patterns for calibration, which will come in handy here in a moment. So everything's going to be right there before you proceed on to the cameras. It's going to give you, if you want to download the checkerboard pattern in 2 different formats, you want to print those out. I actually put mine on top of cardboard. I just taped it down to a piece of cardboard that I found here at my house, because it made it a lot easier whenever I'm holding it up to the cameras for calibration. So once you have everything set up in your Rokoko Vision, you'll see these 2 screens pop up to say, do you fit between the lines? And this is where you're going to actually select the software. So on the left hand side, because I'm using my phone over there, I'm using the iVCam, and then on the right hand side, I'm using Camo. And now this is showing me everything going through my phone and my actual tablet there, and I'm able to get everything calibrated. And so I'm jumping up and down just to make sure that I'm staying between the lines there and everything. But again, you want to make sure that you have those 2 applications filled out in the bottom left hand corner. And then from here, it's going to actually ask you to do the calibration setup, in which is showing you exactly what to do there. So that piece of paper that we printed out and put on cardboard, that's exactly what we're going to be using here. It's a really simple process. You're basically just walking through and you're making sure that everything is lining up. And once you're done with both sides, it's going to calibrate both sides, and it's going to take you on to the next step, as you see here inside the example. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I have it on the floor. I'm just using my foot to kind of line it up. And I want to make sure that both cameras can see it because that's very important. It's actually going to bring up an AR grid on the bottom floor, and it's going to ask you if this lines up, in which you want to make sure you're out of the camera. It took me a few attempts because I kept stepping inside of the camera there. And so you want to kind of duck out of the way whenever it's doing its calibration on this part. And once it's done, you just get into your starting position, in which I usually like going in T-pose. It's just by nature at this point, but whenever I bring in my different models and my different motion captures into whatever application I'm using, I found that it's easy just to line everything up once I have it inside of T-pose. So it's not necessary, but it's just something that I like to do because it makes the steps when I'm working in the 3D application a lot easier. So I'm just doing some moves here, nothing too fancy. I just wanted to test everything out. So, you know, I'm doing some punching motions, some jumping, kind of wiggling my arms around there and everything. And then I'm going to hit stop, and I'm going to let this calculate through Rokoko Vision. So once you hit stop, it's going to come up with the timeline in which you could just play everything just to make sure that both cameras are aligned here. And once you're happy, you just hit turn into animation. And then right here, you can see in the top right hand corner, it's actually going to process it. And then it's going to tell you that it's available to use within Rokoko Studio. So once you're done, it's going to actually come up with this web browser right here where it's going to show you the results. And so it's cool because it shows you your cameras on the right hand side, and then on the left hand side, or actually inside the viewport, it's going to show you the motion capture results, in which I'm going to look at the second example right here when I did the Tootsie Roll pretty much. But you can see T-pose, put my arms down, and I'm just going to the left, to the left, to the right, you know, just moving forward, moving back, and then I do the dip in there as well. And you can see that it's not bad. Like, you know, there's going to be some cleanup on the back end, which is going to be expected, but for using this 2-camera solution, I'm saying it's not really a bad result here. So let's say that we're happy with this motion capture here. So I'm going to come up here to edit in Studio. Now, if you're not familiar, this is Rokoko Studio. And down here on the lower left hand side, you can see that we have the Rokoko Vision test that I just started to do. So I'm going to double click on this to open it up. And now you can see that we have a Rokoko character here, and it has all 3 vision tests up here. So let me actually just do vision test number 2. I'm going to click play. And now you can see, actually, this is the one where I was waving my hand, moving around. You can see that there's a little bit of slippage down there on the feet, but that's where I walked out of camera. You can actually go through and do a little bit of cleanup in here, in which I know Rokoko on their website, they have a lot of really cool in-depth videos on how to do cleanup. I'm not going to do that here because that could get really involved, but let me actually pick a different one here. So go back up here. Let me come back down to test 1. Let's see which one is this one. So this is the first one that I did, where I'm just kind of moving around, kicking around, jumping around, and just scrubbing through it. It's not bad, but I actually want to use the one where I'm dancing because I actually want to show you guys how we can export this out and use it in a, you know, program maybe like iClone or something. So this is the results that I got from this one. Doesn't look too bad. Let's say that we're happy with these results and we actually want to export these out to use in another program, in which I'm going to use iClone. So in order to do that, on the top right hand side where it says file format, I'm just going to go with FBX for my export. So I got my FBX saved out, and this is iClone 8. I'm just using this for example. You could pretty much use anything you want, but this is just a default character that comes with iClone. And so I'm going to take my FBX and actually just click and drag it here onto the character. And so it's going to bring up these import settings. I'm just going to hit convert all. So now I put our character into the T-pose because that's what I started out as. But let me click play. And there we go. So you can see now the character is actually using the motion capture from what I did with Rokoko Vision. As I was saying, of course, you're probably going to have to do some cleanup there depending on your results. But I would say this is a great starting point, especially for a non-motion capture suit solution there. I think this is pretty solid. So I would go in there, probably just clean this up a little bit and come out with some really solid results. If you made it here to the end of the video, give me a big what up down there inside the comments. I would love to see what you guys think of how everything played out here. So that's going to do it. That's Rokoko Vision. So I basically showed you guys how we could take 2 Android devices, hook them up, make them work in sync and tandem all together make a really cool motion capture without a motion capture suit with some pretty solid results. And so, as I alluded to before, you could use anything that you want. You could use iPhones, iPads, Android devices. You can easily use webcams as well. Basically, anything that's going to give you a picture, you could bring it in, plug and play, and be off to the races. So hopefully this helped you guys out, helped you get set up, and hope you guys get a first look. As I also said before, this is part of the subscription service, and so you do get a free 14-day trial if you do want to test it out and see if this is something that's going to work for your workflow. And again, if you're interested, they do have a free solution, which is a one-camera solution in which you could use a webcam or you could use pre-made footage. I did a video on that about 10 months ago. It's called Rokoko Video. Make sure you check that one out if you want to see what that's all about. And make sure you also subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be checking out some more Rokoko stuff here in the future that you don't want to miss out on. So until next time, stay fresh, keep creating, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'll see you soon. Take care.